Brandon here. This is channeled advice on the week ahead, and this is going to be for the week of December 16th through the 22nd. I've got channel messages that came through ahead of time from my spirit guides, the angels and source. I'll be reading through those. I'll also be working with any additional channel information that flows through from my spirit guides, the angels and source. So let's start here. They're just having me read number one. For starters, they're showing me a tiger. There's a message about owning your power and not backing down from your targets this week. Maybe ever, but at least this week. It said, if you know where you'd like to go in the world, this isn't a good time to second guess. Do not recalibrate your desires because you're afraid of pissing people off or going against the grain. You are allowed to create the life you'd like to have, the abundance you'd like to have, the gifts you'd like to have, etc., especially if it's for you. So don't sacrifice your targets for others right now. Really, what this is saying is don't second guess yourself too much, or maybe even if someone else outside of you is like, oh, you'll never make it, or if maybe they're projecting that energy on you, or maybe, what's the best way to say this here? Maybe you're second guessing yourself because of things others are saying. Maybe you're afraid that people will be mad if you have certain things or bring certain things into your life, like abundance, or you achieve certain targets or income levels or whatever, or something spiritually. And your job is to not people please in some ways, is to own your power and move towards what you'd like to have. As long as it's for the highest good and it's of the light. And you would be surprised, maybe some of you, what is of the light when you check in. You might be like, oh, because you might be coming from a judgment of, oh, if you have this business success, then maybe you think you're taking away from other people if you do that. But you might check in and Spirit's like, no, that's actually a great idea. You should have all that business success you'd like to have. And it feels really light and it would help a lot of people. So why not? And then that's just kind of a judgment or story or belief you had that maybe it would help you to get rid of it or something like that. And that's just an example. Just an example. I'm sure not every single one of you that's the target that you have in mind. So I guess in some ways, like check in intuitively about some of those things before you just assume something's not for the highest good or assume something's not of the highest light. Like I'd get used to asking questions or checking in with your spirit guides if you channel, or your intuition if you work with your intuition on those things, instead of just assuming. Number two, they showed me a hippo. They gave me the message that it's about like immovability once you know. And we'll read this here. It's like that you know though. So when you have clarity, don't second guess. When you know something, like especially intuitively or divinely guided in a sense, like don't pretend that you don't know that thing. Hippo spirit animal is calling you to stand in your knowing and what is true and not back down when you know something is true. So if you know it's a bad idea, for example, to go left or something, or to listen to a friend that's trying to tell you to do something, like don't let other people push you to the place it's a bad idea to go, or the direction it's a bad idea to go, or things like that. So I guess I'll re-say that. Like if you know it's a bad idea to go left, for example, don't let other people push you left. Go the way you're guided to go. There are plenty of people who will disagree with you. Trust your knowing instead of them. So to kind of explain that part a little bit here, there could be people out there who might disagree with like anything you'd say if you brought it to like all 7 to 8 billion people in the world. Like even if you said the sky is blue, there might be someone out there who's like, no, it's not. And so you kind of have to like trust yourself a certain amount. I mean, I'm getting this week. This could apply to other times as well, of course, or maybe many times. But there's a certain amount of you who know a direction to go, or something is true for you, or something's a bad idea or a good idea, and you might be letting people steer you away from what you know to be true, and letting people steer you away from what you know to be true is the bad idea. Okay, so in when Hippo showed up, like this hippo presented as like really like heavy, and it's like you weren't gonna move this hippo. Like even if you went up and like shoved the hippo, like the hippo's not moving. It's just gonna like stare at you like you're stupid for trying to move it. So this isn't being narcissistic. This isn't being like a narcissistic wall that won't get anything that anyone tries to bring your way when it comes to like empathy for other people. It's about being very clear. Probably this is really, a message for those of you who are intuitive and channel, or those of you who have a really good clarity on something. Like if you're connected to source, you're getting very clear message, like this is how this works, or this is the way to go. Don't let people push you out of that, especially if they don't know better, or they're not as in tune as you, or they're not as connected as you, or whatever. So that's kind of what that is saying here. There's a little bit more to this though as well. It's also about your path and like if you know what direction you're going, it kind of ties into number 1 as well. If you know what direction you're going, you know what you'd like to bring in, you have clarity, you've done the work to get to this clarity. Like don't just let people make you second guess yourself when you know what your path is, okay? So there's showing me like a 2.5 to this. There might be another message they're throwing in here. They're showing me a jellyfish, like a man of war, and it's like stinging someone. So let me see what's up here. So they're okay. So they're showing like a message about false fears. So for example, if there's a jellyfish, like yeah, you probably don't want you'd probably like to be free from getting stung by a jellyfish or a man of war or anything like that. However, they're showing someone who's like swimming and then there's like seaweed around their leg or something. They're not really stuck. However, they're like freaking out because they think like a jellyfish has them and they're about to die or something like that. When they're just totally fine, they just kind of have to like open their eyes, look at it, realize it's seaweed, and just float to the surface. Like they're not even that far from the top surface of the water. They're like 10 feet away. It's just a few movements away from getting to the surface. So let me see what the message is be about that. Um, some of you that is just what you're dealing with, like you're afraid about who's president right now and them being in office and what could happen with that. You're afraid of what's going on in your personal world. You're afraid of what's going on with your mother, maybe. You're afraid of other things that could potentially happen to you. Maybe you're afraid of like a financial situation. And things are just, for what I'm hearing, is things are better than they seem, really, for the vast majority of you who have a lot of just like false fear going on. So, like, you don't need to worry nearly as much as you are for like all of you, too, by the way. Mm, Try not to think the seaweed is a jellyfish, okay? Number 3, they just said the universe is working things out in your favor. Have faith in your world. So this really segues into this well. Even if things seem a little bit topsy-turvy or you're not sure what's going on, have faith that the universe is on your side right now. If you are doing what you're divinely guided to do, you're going to be fine. I think that's something maybe people forget sometimes, is if we're divinely guided to do something, you're going to be fine if you're following your divine guidance, especially if you have it honed in. Again, like you know what it's like. If you're newer, like I understand why you might experiment with it a bit more before you just like I wouldn't throw yourself off a cliff metaphorically or do like super crazy things before you know how you operate and know what it's like and you have it honed in all the way, and like you know that I guess is a way I'll say it. So however, when we do have our intuition honed in, usually we're totally safe if we're following that and we're making moves intuitively. And the only like quote unquote bad things that happen, if we're going to judge things as bad, are like things that are meant to happen, or it's might be, I don't even think it has to happen, because even as I go to say that, they're like, no, no. So let me double check with them and see what the best way to say this is. So okay, maybe you're moving intuitively. Maybe there's something you didn't desire to happen that happens. And maybe it's not that bad. We're just kind of like, ow, that stung, or maybe even not that, it's just something you didn't desire to happen. It's like maybe you're gaining something really important from that for your future that's gonna make your life 10 times or more greater with what you do with that or what you do in the future. So I don't even think that has to happen. I don't think negative quote unquote things have to happen when we're following our intuition at all. It's just something to keep in mind. Like, you're really going to have what's for the highest good when you're following your intuition, especially in a divinely guided way. Number 4, they show me an octopus. There's a message about being all of you, not just one part. So you are not one dimensional. So they're showing me like art with this one. They're like showing me like business and art. So an example could be someone who's an artist and then they're going into business and they think they need to like cut off the artist part of them so that they could be a gray, dull business person who is successful in business. Boring, 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 which isn't true at all. Like, business can be fun and joyful. Business can be like a joy and creative and full of life force. And yeah, you get it. And maybe that artist part of that individual would be a huge boon to the business side of them, or combining those qualities or traits of themselves, or being all of them would allow them to flourish in it instead of like cutting things off because they think they have to succeed in a certain way. And there was something I was reading recently where someone was talking about it depends on what works for you, right? It's not always about like a one size fits all kind of thing. Like for some people, maybe it really serves them where, and the thing I'm getting to, they just have like one business and they're focused on one thing, one project, and they just focus on one little thing at a time, or big thing at a time, whatever. And for other people, maybe it would be more their speed to have like 5 businesses or like 10 businesses going and like 20 projects going at once or something like that. And that really makes them feel alive and helps them to flourish and thrive. So in some ways, it's about knowing yourself too. Um, which was like another way this was kind of showing up as a message where it's like, you don't have to cut off just like if you have like 2 things you'd like to do, you don't have to cut off like one thing for another necessarily. There might be a way to do both, or maybe one gets put on the back burner or on the stove, the back burner by the universe, or puts on hold by the universe while you work on some other things or a couple other things or one thing, then it circles back around. Um, but really, you don't have to cut off parts of you for anything. I'll just kind of read this message because I feel like I don't want to start talking in circles here. So, if you're thinking of hiding parts of yourself, it's not a good idea. Be all of you. Follow all of your interests. Don't make yourself one-dimensional for others for any reason. Be all of you. And this also again applied to business or work, especially. I could see it applying to relationships too. We'll get to that though. So, anything else I need to say about this for you guys, or what would be asking to come through here? Really, what I'm getting for this crowd is there are multiple things for you, at least for most of you. There's like more than one interest, more than one hobby. In relationships, like you're allowed to have more than one relationship. You don't have to like, and like, yeah, you could be poly and do it that way too. But it could also be like you have a love relationship with someone, and then like you don't have to cut off all your friends to like keep the love relationship. You can have your friends and your love relationship, and things like that. Like, um, because I think sometimes people just cut off parts of their lives or parts of themselves or other relationships to like please one person or one thing that they're really clinging to for whatever reason. And they just really don't have to. And it would serve them to, what's the best way to say this? Allow themselves to have other people in their lives, because it's like if you cut off all these other friends and this one person leaves, it's like, well, where's your support system? Like, where were these other parts of you cut off? Things like that. You got it. Um, I really just feel like this is saying you don't have to cut off parts of yourself for anyone or anything. Honestly, I hope hopefully it's pretty self-explanatory at this point here. Mm, but let's go back to like business and hobbies because that was kind of one of the highlights here, where you might be thinking you only have to do one thing, or you have to please other people or squeeze into an image by only doing one thing, and it would just serve you better to be all of you, whatever this is resonating for you regarding. Okay, so there's a 4.5 they're adding in here. There's a mermaid. This mermaid is like styling their hair. It reminds me of the Little Mermaid almost. They're like looking at wearing like a wig. They're looking at like these different styles, and it's kind of like they're choosing between being two different people on a certain day here. It's not a mental illness thing. So let me see what the message is. So it's kind of time to stop being or trying to be an identity, and it's time to start being you, whoever you are, like especially on a soul level or on like a highest self, like an actual etheric highest self level, and like embodying that more and like discovering you if you're not sure who that is, and allowing that to kind of flourish instead of squeezing yourself into like projections you think will please people, or images you think will even images you think will get you something you want, or something like that. Like there's like a true you that would like to come out and like be there and like express itself through you. So your job, if you don't feel like that's happening, is to do some of the uncovering work, the healing work, the shedding work, shedding of like societal programming, shedding of like who you think you need to be to please others, shedding of things like that, so that you can shine the true you and start to even like attract more of what's for you through shining your authentic frequency and who and what you truly are. Okay, so Try not to think you have to fit into an identity. Identities are kind of all made up, and this is gonna sound a little bit weird, but sometimes the less identity you have, the better off you'll be because you're not as, like, stuck into, like, "Oh, I have to fit into this box or this idea I have of myself or this idea or picture others have of me," and you're more like, "What am I today? Who am I today? Who would I like to be today? What would I like to experience?" And you're not just so stuck in whatever, projections, all that stuff. So you guys get it. That's kind of 4.5, but there's more. They're showing me a 4.6 now before we get to 5 here. So we're back to the mermaid here. The mermaid's wearing like a mask. It's like a coconut, like half a coconut with like a face drawn on it or something like that. And it starts like switching these masks around. And it's like, in this instance, the mermaid's like trying to please her father with the mask she's wearing. She's trying to please everyone else. And she's like never authentically asked, like, what would serve me or what would putting myself first be like? Because she doesn't realize, like, if she were just her authentic self, everyone else would just kind of be okay with it after some time or they'd learn to live with it, and she's just hurting herself by trying to please everyone. And it's like people might not care as much as she thinks if she were to be her authentic self instead of wearing these different masks to please everyone else. And like, your life is for you, at least to a certain extent. Like, you came here for you. You didn't just come here to please everyone else or like play these made up roles for everyone else or squeeze yourself into boxes for everyone else. You really came to be here. And now is the time to start looking at unveiling that if you're not sure what that is, instead of thinking these roles and identities are you when they're not. They're just people pleasing masks and things maybe you have to survive in the world. Nothing wrong with that. And if you continue doing it, at least if you gain clarity around this and like consciousness and awareness around this, you'll just kind of be aware you're doing it and you can choose whether to do it or not. And you're being conscious about it instead of like being at the whim of it or feeling stuck by it or trapped underneath it, if you know what I'm saying. So that's one of the hints they'd like to give you for some reason is like maybe looking like where are you not being authentic and can you change that to please you? Okay. We're not done though. There's a 4.7 with this mermaid journey we're on here. So now the mermaid's taking the mask off. They're looking in the mirror. They're afraid of what they'll see. So the message is like you're more beautiful than you realize. Like if you really unveil your authentic self, like your authentic self doesn't like hate people. It's not like an ugly visage. It's not out there judging people and tearing the world down. And I'm not a big evil eye person, but the words that are coming through for this crowd are you're not like wishing evil eye on people. Like it's a really beautiful thing. So anytime you find a human part of you that you're judging as you or you've misidentified and misapplied as you, that's not actually you, that's like really ugly. I'd really sit with it and be like, is this actually me? Or is this programming? Is this something I bought as me that's not me? Is it something that I think I have to do to survive? Like, what's going on with this? And really look at getting at the bottom of it. Getting to the bottom of it, especially intuitively, if you have your intuition honed in, and starting to unveil some of this stuff and really look underneath it instead of just like assuming, like, oh, that's just how it is. That's just how I am. Because ugliness isn't who you are, is the message. And I think we forget that. And now that's not like an excuse to keep those things around because that's not us, like it's not an excuse to like go around mistreating people and be like, oh, well, that's not who I am actually. That's just this programming and then doing it anyways. Like, if you're operating with awareness, you're not going to do that, because you'll be getting the awareness of what that's going to create, what that's going to do in the world. And you're going to be like, no, I'm not going to choose that, usually. So let me get back to what was for that kid to come through here. It's just kind of time to start getting underneath all these false stories and like getting clear on what you are is what I'm hearing. So anything else here? 4.8, 4.9, or are we going to 5 here? They're moving on here. They're showing me a gorilla before we get to number 5 as well, like King Kong, like beating his chest up on the building, swatting at toy airplanes, and things like that, holding the lady that is in King Kong, I guess. And so what's the message with this here? So some of you are defending parts of yourselves that you don't have to. What does that mean here? Maybe give me 1 second. I just want to make sure I get the thing that's really going to be helpful for you guys. So give me 1 second to get the message here. So, like, maybe some of you are like defending being poor, for example. You're like, oh, I'm right for this, and all the rich people are wrong, and all the people who have money are wrong. And, poverty doesn't, it's not like a moral superiority thing. It doesn't make anyone better than anyone else. It's just like, that just is the situation. If you kind of look at it from a non judgmental standpoint, it's just like, okay, there's just not a lot of money there for that person right now. And it doesn't mean it can't change. It's just doesn't make them better than anyone else. It just kind of like being rich doesn't make someone who's rich better than other people who aren't rich. It's kind of the same game, just like different side of the coin. So are you like doing something along the lines of like defending being poor and like judging it as right, or like defending being, maybe for some people it's defending being single as opposed to being in a relationship. Maybe for some people it's defending like being an asshole to people because of your painful past and you think that justifies it, but does it really? Because, there are also plenty of people who have not had, or who have had just as or more painful pasts, who aren't assholes to other people and don't mistreat other people. So it's not really an excuse at all. It's just a behavior that is chosen either in response to the situation or whatever. Either way, it's still like a choice being made, and something that's being chosen over and over again if they're not willing to do the work to heal it and they're making an excuse for it. So there are other things we could dive into with this one. Maybe some of you are pissed I just said that. I don't care. I think that needs to be said, maybe even more if you're pissed that I just said that. So let's get to the next thing they want me to get to here. So the question is like, what are you defending that you don't need to defend anymore? Like, is it a mask? Is it a thing in your life that's going wrong? Is it a situation you'd like to get rid of, but you're kind of still defending it and keeping it around anyways? Like it reminds me of when you start kind of digging into like, I think anxiety might be a good example with this actually, where sometimes people have a lot of anxiety, and the second they start to unpack like what's actually at the root of it and like have conversations where people recommend things that could actually start to shift it, like the person with anxiety gets mad that they're like potentially going to get rid of the anxiety. Like it sounds weird, but that's like one way they're defending it, because there's probably something they're getting out of having the anxiety. Like maybe it's like an excuse where they don't have to work a certain job and make a certain amount of money, or then they don't have to potentially be a failure, because they don't have to try because this anxiety is in the way. And so like there can be these like strange things like that going on for some people where they're defending this like part of themselves or this negative thing going on in their life that doesn't really need to be there, but there's something they're getting out of it sort of. And sometimes you really have to go deep with this stuff. You really have to look at the stories and the energetic patterns and like the things at the root of it, even if they're really surprising and maybe they wouldn't even totally make. I mean, it does make cognitive sense on a certain level when you look at it, but sometimes it doesn't at the same time, because it's like if you really looked at it, like who would actually desire to be like poor unless there's someone who's like really feeling freed by something like that, like if they're going in like to be a monk on like a mountainside or something like that. It's kind of like, what are they getting out of a situation they say that they wouldn't like to have, that keeps them kind of holding on to that situation and defending it almost, maybe even without them realizing it on the surface. So that's kind of what they're talking about. There's a bit more we could delve into. So is there anything kind of pinging for you as I'm talking about this, or kind of resonating, or like memories kind of resurfacing, thoughts to certain situations surfacing, maybe even about yourself or another person that you're dealing with, where you're kind of like, ooh, I think this might be going on in this area. And that might be a good thing to dig into this week, or just kind of contemplate through the months ahead and see about maybe meditating on it, putting your awareness on it, seeing what shifts, doing some energy healing for it. If you facilitate energy healing, look at the resources that might be required for you to shift it, because that might be one of the blocks in your world that's keeping things from going the way you'd like it to go. Okay. Anything else before we move on? No. Number 5, create your destiny. Not everything is written in stone. This is important for some reason. So it's important to realize that what you do every day creates your reality. Your choices have an impact on your future. It's not that you don't have a destiny. It's not that source isn't guiding you to something. It's not that you don't have things that you signed up for when you incarnated, in certain ways, or certain things you chose when you incarnated. It's just important to recognize that you also influence your future, like with what you believe, with what you choose, with things like that, with the way you're approaching your day, the way you treat other people. So a part of this is, okay, where would they like to go next? Don't think you don't have to do anything. Take action on your targets. That's one of the things this is talking to, is like, maybe there's someone who has this idea like, oh, they're destined for this thing. They don't have to do anything. And, maybe. And also, maybe that's not true. Maybe the actions they're taking are a part of their destiny, and having that come about. Now, I'll give you some caveats. I know for me, and it can maybe work for different people depending on what they believe and where they're at with everything too. So, you don't have to bank this is the way it's going to show up for everyone, and this is going to be what everyone says. But for me, like, if I manifest something or ask for something, or there's something I'm supposed to have, like, I will find myself automatically taking the actions it takes to bring that in, or like doing the things it takes. Like, I'll just feel compelled, I'll be guided to do it, and things like that, because that's how manifestation works for me. And I've either asked for that, or I've honed that in, or I've gotten to that place somehow. And yeah, different people are in different places, so different people might say different things when you ask them, maybe even at different times in their journey. Um, the other thing I'll say about manifestation, I really think the less we complicate it and put like different rules or like laws on it, the easier it can be to like manifest things and have things show up, because our belief system, what we believe, really can impact what's showing up and how things show up. So the less you have in the way of it being easy and working well and just showing up with ease and grace, like, the better is what I'd say usually. Or it's like the more you're going to have ease and grace with those sorts of things usually, unless there's like a damn good reason the universe is not having it show up for you that way. So, because the universe knows what's for that is good, too. It's not just like a mindless beast just bringing things in and out of your world. And that'd be interesting, wouldn't it? So let me see what they'd like to get to next with this one here. So, like, what are you doing every day? Like, are you getting under the hood of your life and like seeing what's running the show, seeing what beliefs are running the show, seeing like what you're doing every day and what that's creating for you, like seeing like what your choices are creating? And it's really kind of time to get clear on like, what do you need to do to bring about what you'd like to have? And even if you're not sure where to start, I'd ask for clarity from the universe. I'd ask for the resources, the ways to manifest things, whatever the tool, like what's required for you to start having clarity on that, or things like that. And can you at least like give it a shot? Like, can you at least like try to do the things that are going to create the best reality for you day by day, and start to kind of treat every day as like, wow, this is a chance to live my best life. And some days it's a rest day, and that's what you're being guided to do. That's what the universe is calling you to do. Some days it's a work day. Some days it's a fun day, and you kind of just either approach it intuitively or just look at what it's going to create energetically and do your best with all that. Um, this is really asking you, though, not to just leave it up to chance with everything showing up in your world, or think you don't have to do anything in your world. Like, again, what is required of you to have what you'd like to have, whether it's self-healing or anything, I guess. Number 6, the message is trust you. You know your life. Like, it can be tempting to take everything that we hear and apply it to our lives, is what they'd like me to say. Like, so we might hear something and we'd like to apply something to our lives immediately. Like, maybe we listen to a podcast about aliens, and this is going to be a silly example. Let me see what the best example is here. Like, maybe you listen to a podcast and someone's like, you need to pour mustard on your hands every day to manifest your dreams. That's the only way. And then, which it's silly on purpose. Okay. And so it's like, it can be tempting to just like buy that and be like, oh, we got to get started on this right now. We're just like pouring mustard on our hands, or something like that. And, sometimes it's good to kind of check in with us and check in with our intuition and be like, okay, is that true? Or is there a better way for me? And like you might be laughing. It's just like people kind of do this. And maybe they'll usually do it with examples that are less silly than that. Usually. However, um, here we go. Not everyone out there knows what they're talking about. Not everyone knows the circumstances of your life when they post something online or say something or write something in a book, even. It's important to take the context of your life into anything you hear and not just blindly follow advice. For some reason, that's something my spirit guides would like to bring through for those of you who are going to be tuning into this video. And for, I guess, for when you are, though, especially for this week. So I think this is pretty clearly just about not blindly following advice and things like that, but really trusting your intuition and you as well with what you're guided to do. I'll give you an example from my own life. Earlier on here, like there was, and I've seen other people kind of talk about this too, where like one time I read a book. Oh, there were multiple lessons like this at this time in my life, and it was painful. And if you can kind of listen to this and it helps you to avoid some of that pain, awesome. There's this book on relationships. I think the book was like Light Her Fire or something like that. And so I happened to be in like a long distance relationship at the time. This is like early 20s. This is a long time ago, guys. And I was kind of just copy and pasting some of the advice from the book because I was like, wow, it's an expert on relationships. If I just follow this, it'll probably work out well. And it was just like the most blow up in my face type of thing. Like it backfired so hard because I wasn't being my authentic self and I wasn't like trusting what I naturally felt called to do in the situation. And even before I like got into this, like channeling and intuition, really honed it into a high level and things like that, and really owned like everything I know to a high level, I guess, if that makes sense as a sentence. Even then, like I would kind of find myself like if I was trusting myself with what I felt called to say with like talking to girls or like in relationships, it would tend to go relatively well most of the time. And sure, like not like every single situation was like worked out the way I'd like it to. It just like went better than when I was trying to like take expert advice and apply it without really considering like, does this apply for me? Does this feel true for me? Is this authentic to me? And like my vibe and like what I stand for and my values and things like that. And it didn't really seem to go as well until I got back to me and got back to my intuition and my divine guidance and following what I knew. Okay. And by what I know, I mean what I knew, I mean like what I know intuitively, what I know divine guidance wise, and in being true to myself and what I'm called to do in the world and things like that. And becoming more myself. So once I started doing that, things tended to work a lot better for me in like every area, honestly. Um, and like also for just like different things at the time, like marketing, like there were business things I was working on, and you'd try to like, I saw examples of other people just trying to take something and just like copy and paste it into a context where it didn't really work very well. It didn't really fit. And then like it obviously didn't work very well because it wasn't based on like what's going on here in the context. It was like, oh, this worked for this company over here, even though it's a completely different industry and a completely different target. It's a completely different audience and a completely different thing. Like, let's just try it anyway. And it just, of course it didn't. And maybe sometimes it could work. But you kind of have to move intuitively and in a way where you're authentically you. I mean, you don't have to. It's probably a good idea to follow, do things intuitively and do things in a way you're guided to, and do things in a way that feels authentic to you. Even if you're someone who's newer to this and you don't have your intuition and divine guidance at the place you'd like it to be yet, like you probably might be able to think of some context where it's like if when you were just kind of following what you felt called to do or felt like was right in the situation, it went a lot better than like trying to just like copy and paste someone else's advice or something like that. And sometimes there are people who know what they're talking about, or they are in tune. They do channel great information, intuitive information that really applies to us. And we can take that and work with it, and it works perfectly. Like, yes, that's out there too. Now, you have to also use your discernment on all that too. I'm like, who are the people who know what they're talking about, and how is what they're how. Sometimes we also have to look at like how does it apply to us. Okay. Um. So anything else I need to say on this here? they're kind of going back to the marketing example too, where like sometimes we just kind of have to do things that are authentic to our energies and true to who we are, and it, that's just going to work out better than like what other people are saying. Okay, usually. The next parts here, I feel like I'm not getting to something they're trying to get me to. So give me one second. Oh, okay. This is interesting. So one thing they're kind of saying about this is like, are certain things vibrationally compatible with you and your vibration and like your soul's vibration? So there might be someone out there in the world and you see them doing this like skeevy, underhanded like marketing tactic, and it kind of it's like maybe it's more fear-based and it seems to work for them, and maybe that's a keyword. Maybe it does. Maybe that's just how it appears. And you're like, "Oh, that doesn't feel very good." And, like, maybe on some level, another person might be tempted to use that, but they're not vibrationally compatible with a tactic like that, and so if they try to do it, it's so, like, inauthentic, like, it doesn't quite work as well. So, that might not be a one size fits all kinda message, like, there might be other nuances to this before you just take this and apply it as the rule of the universe, so maybe don't do that quite yet. Um but that's one thing to consider as well with like in relationships and business and what you're doing in the world are like the things you're attempting. What's the best way to say this? Like, are you vibrationally compatible with the things you're doing? And, maybe it's possible if we look at ourselves and our own vibration, we can raise our vibration and become compatible with different things we'd like to be compatible with in a higher way. So it's not to limit you or say nothing's going to work for you. It's not saying like, it's not saying like if you're not vibrationally compatible with like money that you won't be able to have a lot of money because you can change your vibration. You can become more vibrationally compatible with money in a higher aligned way. It's not going to bring you down in vibration, I promise. Especially if you're going about it in the right ways for you and the aligned ways for you. And especially if you're working with spirit on that too, working out with the universe on that. So I feel like I have said a lot about this, and hopefully, I'm not beating it to a pulp too much at this point. But let's see if I can get a summary from them or what they'd like to say next. There were some questions they had channeled down ahead of time that might be helpful. So, especially if you answer these intuitively or consider these, what is your world asking you to do? Like, what is your life asking for? Like, not other people, not other things. Excuse me. Like, what is your world asking you to do? What is your life asking for? And then also, like, what is your soul asking for in your life? And those like kind of things are probably going to help your life and your reality and your circumstances more than just like trying to force something to fit that's not the right fit. Okay. So trust yourself, your life, follow your own intuition. I realize yeah. I guess I'll leave it there. I guess there was actually like a number one. Sorry, another one. So they showed me elephants, and they showed these like elephant footprints being made like in the mud, like going forward. And there's like a leaf, like a giant leaf being held over this elephant's head to like protect it from the rain. It's wearing like that's interesting. So the message is literally that there is just a trail spirit is making for you. So if you feel stuck, there is a trail being made. You're not going to be left out in the cold. You're not going to be left behind per se. You're going to have a way forward soon. So that's cool. Especially like if you are feeling more stuck right now, I feel like this is like after Christmas. You're going to feel more unstuck for most of you, just kind of like in the next couple months though, like the trail will be presented and you'll be able to move forward more easily. There is like a lot going on in the world, like a lot of energy flying around, a lot of different like opinions flying around, a lot being moved around. So you might just kind of be on standby from your position until the path is ready, until the path is clear, until things are ready to move forward for you in like an aligned, safe way. The last thing they showed me was like a bell, like a gong. They showed me sound healing. They're giving me the word clear. So can you cleanse your vibrations this week? Like, can you really keep your space clear, your energies clear, and do that like every day? Like, it's going to help immensely for the vast majority of you, especially if you don't already do that. Like, it's going to get you clear of other people's stuff. It's going to get you more clarity. Because again, there are a lot of energies flying around out there in the world, and the last thing you need is to be living someone else's reality or feeling someone else's pain unnecessarily or feeling someone else's anxiety when you could just be kind of having a peaceful day and getting some rest or, whatever you need to be doing that day. So it's kind of the last message is just kind of keeping yourself clear. So that's kind of it. The last thing they're showing me before we totally close this out, there's like a woolly mammoth type thing. There's like a pokeball showing up here. So let me see what's up with all those things showing up. There is a message about ancient history clearing, like ancient parts of ourselves that maybe are more negative being removed, like ancestral lineage or ancestral blocks, if you use that phrasing, or things like that. So be a little bit patient with yourself this week because there's like a certain amount of like clunkiness from our worlds that's being removed. And like, what does that mean with clunkiness? It's kind of like, maybe there are certain ways that things worked in our world that that they were like kind of clunky. They didn't work very well, but we thought they worked kind of well. Like maybe for you it was like manifestation as an example, and like you were like, all right, I have to make my ask, and then I have to like do this like 12-hour chant every day, and then I have to spin around 3 times, and I have to like go through all this really hard shifting and transformation and really force all the things I have to do to make this happen. And I gotta do this for like 12 weeks, and then maybe, just maybe, the universe will give me a drop that tells me this manifestation is working. And like that would be kind of clunkier than just like ask and you will receive, or like maybe there's a much more streamlined way the universe is like trying to give you for manifestation by clearing certain beliefs or clearing things out of the way, or just maybe there's just a better way things work that hasn't been discovered for you or by you yet, for you. So it's kind of like there's a certain amount of clunkiness in the way the world has been operating for us that's being lifted away so we can have a higher light, a higher aligned, a more of spirits, a more streamlined reality for ourselves. And it doesn't necessarily have to be shared by all of us. It could be like our version of that or our next level up to that for us, whatever that looks like. But that's sort of what they mean by like clunkiness being removed. And it'll probably make sense if you pay attention, like with the ways things shift energetically for you after this message and the way your world starts working a bit better. It could be a very physical thing, like things work a lot better at work, or it could be a very energetic thing where you just have a much breezier time moving about the world with the work you're doing, or energetically, or just manifestation or healing, whatever it is, with whatever you're doing or whatever the heck's going on for you. Okay. So that's kind of it here. But what about the Pokeball? The Pokeball is kind of just saying like there are things that are for you coming in big ways, even in like this upcoming years. So have a little bit of patience, but like you're going to be capturing the things that are for you, I guess, and really reeling them in. So it's a really big blessing on the way regarding the things for you coming in with ease, which is awesome. And some of you, it's something you've worked hard for a long time. Others of you, it's just coming in really randomly, and you're like, oh, cool. It's like, like winning the lottery could be an example. I'm not promising you're all going to win the lottery, by the way. It's just a way I could describe the energy of what I'm talking about in a certain avenue of a way it could show up for this crowd. Okay. So hope that helped, resonated, to whatever was for your highest good. If you'd ever like to go further with my work, I do, of course, have a lot in the shop at brandonhbloom.com/stop. There's a shop for brandonhbloom.com/shop. SHOP. So you can look there. There's a Let's Go Higher membership. And if you sign up on the landing page, and I'll have a link below as well, you'll actually get over 50% an over 50% discount on your first month if you sign up, through the landing page or through the link below on the description of the video. So that's pretty cool. There's a lot of content in there. There's a lot of past content as well. So there's channel messages on the month ahead geared specifically towards the members. There's a live Q&A channel A where members submit questions, and I'll channel information on those questions for the members to kind of serve everybody in the membership that's listening. There's a new full channel mode session that goes out every month, and a new channel guided meditation that goes out every month as well. And then you have a library of the past months of those, areas of content as well. So you have like a bunch of Q&A channel A live sessions. You have a bunch of channel guided meditations and things like that. So, the full channel mode session for this month was Grace on Your Path, increasing the ease and grace on your world. That was what it was geared towards. I believe the channel guided meditation was Getting Unstuck. And there was also a new Valeuka audio loop that was added to the membership. It's not available for sale yet on my shop. It's on the way, to create change for the highest good. So if you're interested in any of that, that's all available in the membership now. And other than that, you can also find more from me on brandonhbloom.com if you'd like to discover the other things that I'm offering there. Okay. And then there's also an art store with channeled Valeuka symbols and crystals I'm selling, valeuart.com. You can check that out if you're interested as well. Okay. So I will see you on another post.